or say something, and please use your microphones. It has been highlighted to me by a number of people this week that councillors sometimes don't. And obviously there's lots of public interest, particularly in this meeting. So thank you very much. So we'll get started. Apologies, Andy.
Good evening, members. I have apologies from Councillors Towell, Hannan, Motta, Cheney, and also the Reverend Anderson.
Super. Thanks, Andy. Interest, we'll grab those as and when, if appropriate. Just make those aware to us. Let's go through the minutes from the full council meeting on the 2nd of October. I'll assume that everyone's read them. Does anyone have any queries about them? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, can I note under the apologies that there's no apologies either for Councillor Gardner?
Okay. Any other queries on the minutes from the 2nd of October? No? Okay, so I'm happy to propose those. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, all in favour? Any objections? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you. And in terms of matters arising, Andy, did you want to go through those?
Yes, there is a separate agenda item which has a printout, but very briefly. So the first item on the list is the IBABS issue, and we have the IT manager present to talk through that briefly, just to update members.
Okay, Will, did you want to talk about that?
Hi, Council. Just to update on the situation with issues around IBABS, we have seemingly resolved the main issue of the inability to log into the IBABS app. I'm aware there's still an issue around the timeout for the login session, people getting sort of kicked out every sort of 10 minutes. But Councillor Larson has provided me with some information I can go back to IBABS with, and I'll be working with them to try and resolve that. So yeah, we're doing pretty well, I think. Thanks.
Yeah, please carry on. Yeah.
So on page, on page 3, there was an instruction for myself to email Councillor Gardner. That email has gone in relation to the Newquay Airport.
Perfect, thank you. So presumably that's on the under the Cornwall Council section. If there are questions around that, yeah. Super, thank you.
And there's one final item on my list, which is the letter to the Health and Safety Executive. I am still awaiting examples in order to send that email, which I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, sure. So I think that was an ask of members to send in examples of health and safety issues. I think it was around the Hotel Bristol. I know there was a rather large area of balcony hanging off the back of it the other day when I went past, and a few tiles flying around earlier today. But if we could please provide the clerk with any examples that he can then go to the Health and Safety Executive. Councillor Kenny, did you want to come in?
Yes, I wondered if we could actually add to it Scarivos, because they've taken the roof off that, and that was discussed at some length yesterday at planning, and we passed a motion to say we really ought to be talking health and safety there, because in a decent storm that's going to be all over the place. So you might as well combine the two.
Sure. Are you happy to pick that one up, Andy? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Okie doke. So moving on to item 5, which is community safety reports, and we have Inspector Steve Johnson here. Did you want to take over from there then? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. A few more faces in the room this week, but still familiar nonetheless. As a result of my last attendance, I know that you wanted some more figures, so I've produced a number of bits and pieces for you this week with regards to graphs and figures. So the first page that you've got there is crime figures relating to November. Just to provide a little bit of context to that as well. So you've got the crime figures there for November. The total figures for October, of which there was 158. In October there was 247, and in November period for the same for the same November period last year, there was 206. So we are a little bit down on last year's figures and down on October, which is kind of expected given the time of year, etc. You'll see as we move through those figures, there are a couple of areas that will raise concern to a few people. So the first one would be stalking and harassment, which has increased, as you can see, on a monthly basis by 35%. Most of those stalking and harassment offences are supplementary offences, so they're a bolt-on to an existing crime, primarily where there's been perhaps an assault and somebody goes, follows them or continues to try and contact them. So they're supplementary offences, and because of the way that the National Crime Recording Standards are now done, those are being picked up, whereas previously they were perhaps an additional comment within the original crime, which is why we're getting more of those coming through. So that accounts for some of that increase, certainly. As we move down, you'll see there that there is an increase in rape offences, so 166%. So that figure comes across as being quite startling. I appreciate that. Actually, it's still fairly small numbers, so we're still talking about 8. Nonetheless, 8 is still far too many. Of those 8, just to add a little bit of context to it, and I have to be careful because some of these are still live investigations, but 3 of those offences are non-recent, so they are offences where they've happened throughout the year, or possibly even 2 or 3 years ago, where victims have now got the confidence to come forward and tell the police, so that we're able to record them and start to investigate them. Nonetheless, that still leaves 5. All have been reported this month to us. There are suspects attached to all of those. A number of them have been in custody. Like I said, I don't want to go into too much detail because they're still live investigations, but I'll gladly take any questions outside with regards to those if anybody wants any additional context. There are some drops in crime there as well. So basically in the last column where you see the minus figures, that shows a drop in offences. There's a drop in public order offences, which I'm pleased to see. And obviously we've got the possession of drugs and the drugs trafficking. They've been reduced as well. Strangely, they're probably the ones that I'd like to see a little bit more consistent. So on the face of it, less drug crimes looks good, doesn't it? But actually it just means that perhaps we're not finding what we would the previous month. So consistency is key with that. I'd like to see a little bit more consistency because actually we're really quite proactive during October, but because of the nature of our business, we can't always be that proactive. Sometimes we have to be reactive depending on what offences and what we get recorded to us. The one at the bottom there has been an increase in the miscellaneous crimes against society. Probably not particularly clear, that one. It's about preparatory offences or fraud offences. So if somebody gets a wallet stolen and we get subsequent frauds, they're all classed as crimes against society. So they're those kind of offences really. Dangerous driving also falls under that, and there was one of those as well. All right. So you'll see from the graphs, the first graph is a week-on-week one throughout the year. The yellow dot in that first graph shows you what we were the previous year. So you'll see that we're down sort of all the way through October and November and last year. The next one is a monthly chart which kind of depicts summer and winter. So you've got the darker grey area which covers the winter periods and the lighter grey which is the summer periods. So we're pretty much in the middle of those control bars there, which are the turquoise ones. So that is kind of the overview on crimes. What I did want to mention to you was something that's been running throughout the summer, and I don't know whether some of you may already be aware of it. I know I've certainly had discussions with some of you about it, and that was the hotspot policing. Hotspot policing was an initiative set up by the government, and it was government funded to provide both police officers and street marshals or street wardens for the town centres around the country. Devon and Cornwall Police got a proportion of that budget, and it was separated amongst various towns and cities throughout. Newquay qualified for a large proportion of that budget because of our nighttime economy and the attraction that draws with it. So we claimed quite a nice section of that budget, and throughout the summer we've been able to put out a couple of street wardens and a couple of police officers at various times throughout the afternoons and into the early evening as well. That not only provides a deterrent and a visible presence for people, but there's numerous examples of positive engagement throughout the town. And actually, as we've moved through the summer, we've been able to monitor that a little bit. So the street wardens who actually street marshals who work out of the town council offices pick up a little GPS tracking device, and that maps where they go. So in Newquay, because of previous data based on crime, antisocial behaviour, etc., we had 4 areas. One of the areas was outside the post office. One of them was the shelters at the edge of the Barrowfields. The other 2 would be no surprise to learn that they're Central Square and 4th Street. So the expectation was that the street wardens go out, street marshals go out, police officers go out, and they spend 15 minutes of their shift in each one of those hotspot areas. So that doesn't sound like a lot in an 8-hour shift, but actually it provides quite a lot of presence in the town centre themselves, because they have to walk between the 2. And we don't actually stipulate, or the hotspot policing doesn't stipulate where they go. I might stipulate where they go, but that's based on sort of more dynamic intelligence more than anything else. So when I look back at the data, in October on one of the days, actually each of those hotspot areas had got, the hotspot areas for one shift had got over 4 hours coverage. So that's quite a lot. And when you look at the map, you can see zigzags all over these squared areas. So we know they're getting proper coverage by the people that are doing it. And actually that's been picked up at force level. So we are kind of leading the way a little bit in Newquay on how we're utilising that budget and how we're utilising those people to cover those hotspot areas. So the figures and the data that gets spat out of the other side of that is a little bit behind. So I haven't got November's data, but I have got October's data. So there was 176 available patrols, and we put out 144. So we're covering nearly all of those available shifts. There was numerous counts of intelligence that was submitted by both the street marshals and the police officers. They're asked to record all their public engagement, so all their public engagement when they speak to people in the street. And that doesn't have to be necessarily to intervening something. It can be to provide people directions or offer them safety advice on their way home or whatever it is. So there was various police engagements throughout October, 530. The street marshals did 240. The police visited 245 premises. Some of those are the same ones, obviously, but they visited, they've done 245 visits, and the marshals have also done 155. The marshals of interest are also CSAS credited, which is Community Safety accredited, so they are now in a position where they can help us. So they can demand people's names and addresses if they've committed offences. They can seize alcohol from people and dispose of it. So that's a really good benefit for the town. This project continues throughout the winter, so we're going to continue to use it through the Christmas and New Year period, and it will go through to April of next year, when that funding will cease from government level. From a police perspective, that doesn't really affect us that much, because we can absorb some of that hotspot into our existing neighbourhood patrols, but there will be other funding available for police for us to tap into to do the very similar thing. That's not necessarily the same for the street marshals, though. So I know that we've got, I've spoke to a number of people, and we've got some meetings coming up in the new year where we can discuss possible funding streams to try and continue that as we go through next year. I genuinely think it's a benefit for the town, not just for the reasons, like I say, for intervention, prevention of ASB, but those positive engagement things as well as people leave. So that's kind of where I'm at with that at the moment. And that's the overall crime figure. no doubt a few people have got questions regarding those crime figures and bits and pieces. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Kenny first. Thank you, Inspector Johnson.
Right, thank you very much, Steve. I think the way you've done the reports are excellent. I love the yellow spots. That makes things a lot clearer. I'm delighted to see there's only one burglary. One too many, but there's only one. And really, when you were talking about that fun bit and the hotspots, does that tie in with our CCTV at all?
Yes, yeah. So we are, and I know I've said on a number of occasions, we are extremely lucky in Newquay with our CCTV. Having worked other locations throughout my career, I know how frustrating it can be when you go to a job in a town or a city centre and trying to speak to the CCTV operative can be quite laboursome. We're lucky. They're based at the police station. They know us all. We know them. And they'll quite often speak to us direct on the radio. They've got to know the street marshals. They know the police officers. In fact, the cameras are so good, they can see the shoulder numbers of the officers anyway. So even if they don't know them, they can still call them direct, which is great. So yeah, it does help because they can identify. It's worth 1,000 eyes, isn't it? You know, to have a CCTV camera that can see around a corner and down a street and tell us that something's going on means that we can direct those patrols better. So yes, it does link into CCTV really quite well.
Councillor Garden and then Councillor Williamson.
Hi Steve, yeah, I met with Mark Warren, the bid manager, on Monday, and I've said I'll work with him to help try and identify some funding to at least try and fill that interim year for the street marshals. One thing perhaps that this town council might want to consider, and it's not something for today, but we can take away to another meeting, is we haven't been able to fill the town ranger roles. I believe we did take someone on, and that hasn't worked out. So perhaps we could consider how that funding, perhaps, or that role could be used to augment what the street marshals are doing. You know, something for us to discuss at a later date, perhaps.
Hi, thank you for your report and your update. It's always good to kind of chat face to face. And I think the hotspot policing that you were talking about is really good, especially from the visibility and reassurance on the streets for everybody. And just as we go into the Christmas period, I think one of the questions I asked you last time was about kind of behaviours within nightclubs and pubs and date rape. I don't think it should be called date rape drugs, but spiking. Thank you. And so I was just wondering how that's progressing, and also, do you have any plans on drink driving kind of stops and things like that?
Yeah, okay. So firstly then, so drink spiking was what we discussed last time, wasn't it? And if I remember right, we just had an incident actually, and we were working our way through that. So yes, we are doing more work on that. There's a couple of places around the town that weren't part of Pub Watch. They've now been recruited, which is great. Because being part of that allows us to push out those messages a lot easier. So yes, we've continued with the Ask Angela stuff around the Pub Watch, and you'll know that we've also got the Reclaim the Night on Friday as well, which is really positive for the town, and a lot of the clubs know about that as well. So yeah, it's we're working through that with all the licensed premises to try and do what we can. And actually, we've just got a new delivery of drink spiking kits, so we'll make sure that all the pubs and clubs have got those, and they know what to do with them. They should already know what to do with them, but we can reiterate that certainly. Yeah, that's how we're moving along with that. The drink drive campaign, so that's started already. The drink drive campaign is called Up Limit, or Operation Limit. Started on the 29th of November. That is something that we will be doing. There's sort of targeted time zones, which are the ones you would expect really. So Friday, Saturday nights are the prime ones, and they've secured extra funding, or we've secured extra funding for those through Vision Zero, which is the arm of us that reduces road traffic deaths, etc. So we've secured funding for extra officers for that. and then we'll be doing short individual ops as and when we can. So there won't necessarily be every Wednesday night or every Tuesday night. There'll be when we can, and it'll be a case of, right, let's go out and let's do it here or let's do it there. And they may be centred around particular events that we've got.
Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, thank you. Very much informative report. I concur with Councillor Gardner that with the street marshals, if extra funding can be made available to sustain and carry on that, it's something the town needs. Interesting point about your spiking, and I want to bring this to your attention because not all of you are as young as me and go clubbing in sailors. But that environment, and please do an inspection and go in, they provide drinks in beakers and cups that are solidly black in colour. You cannot differentiate with your friends on one table, let alone anywhere else. Whether it's a lager, a cider or a Guinness, you don't necessarily know what your drink is. I suggest, and I'd like you and your gentlemen to go and investigate, because that is an ideal opportunity for people to spike drinks, because you cannot see the discolouring or any other effect with an establishment. I went once back, I didn't even know where my drink was, not because I had a couple, because I go back to a table with 6 beakers, all black. And in public houses where we go today, you will see Kronenberg glasses, whatever, you know which is yours. In the Sailors' Arms here in Newquay, the biggest establishment, which socialises with thousands of people, week in, week out, there is an opportunity there for somebody to have a field day. And I would like, if someone could investigate, and the brewery needs to remove those black beakers. Sir, that's my point.
No problem.
Thanks, Councillor Gooch, for that.
Okay, yeah, so I wasn't aware of that, so thank you. Yeah, and we will do a licensing check. I haven't got a problem with that. You'll know that we've done that over many years, and we've been instrumental in making sure that they get those reinforced plastics rather than glass to remove those issues. So we'll have a look at that, certainly.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, last one.
Thank you. Yes, just a brief one. Can I just check on the geographical area that this data is covering? Because I think in the past it used to go out, include Indian Queen at the...
No.
It doesn't anymore.
No, you haven't got that.
So it's purely just Newquay?
This is Newquay, yeah.
Okay, and not the surrounding...
It's Newquay patch, so it doesn't cover St Column Major, Indian Queens, Fradham, but it does cover Crantock.
And Quintrell Downs?
And Quintrell Downs, sorry, yes.
So it goes out that far?
Yeah, but it doesn't cover.
Okay.
But it doesn't cover the St Column area.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I mean there was a drink driving, rolling of a car vehicle back in October. I didn't by me, and I live in Colham Parish. I didn't know if it comes that far out and includes that data
it
or
would
not.
cover Colham. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Super, thank you. Thank you, Inspector Johnson. Really appreciate your time this evening and indeed earlier on with the clerk and I. And just for members' information, we have in fact spoken to Inspector Johnson about the opportunities around our own enforcement team vacancies and where we might be able to work collaboratively together for the benefit of the town. So we'll pick that conversation up in the new year for sure. Of course, you are more than welcome to stay for what will be a thrilling meeting, but we'll excuse you if you'd like to go as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wish
Thank you for what you do.
Merry Christmas as well when you get there.
All right. Thank you. Okay then, so item 6 is the open session for electors of Newquay, verbal or written questions. I don't believe we have any written questions. And we do have our Councillor Fitter in the gallery. Hello, Councillor Fitter. And a member of the public. Would you like to ask a question? No, you're okay? That's fine. Just here to watch. Good. Okie dokie. So then moving on to item 7, correspondence. And there is a draft statement here written by the mayors of Cornwall, the clerk and I recently attended a Mayors of Cornwall meeting, and along with all 6 of the Cornish MPs, they were keen to put out a statement on devolution, but clearly we needed to run this before full council, before we put our name to it, or I put my name to it on behalf of the town council. So does anyone have any questions on that? Presumably you've all read it. Councillor Kenny.
Not a question, I just thought it was rather good. I've got no comments at all.
Oh, thank you very much. Councillor Gardner.
Again, not a question. It's just a comment, really. I've got nothing against it. My preference would be for a Cornwall only Devo deal. We obviously had that on the table before. I find it quite ironic because the Labour councillors said that they couldn't vote for that deal, and the reason they gave because we would get a better deal for Cornwall only without the need for a mayor within 100 days of a Labour government. That obviously didn't happen. What I would say is, what I wouldn't ever want Cornwall to, obviously this is our preference, but what I wouldn't ever want Cornwall to do is like cut its nose off to spite its face. And if the government are really, really tending towards, every piece of correspondence I've seen from Jim McMahon, who's a minister, and from Angie Rayner, who's the Secretary of State for Local Government, every single piece of correspondence have said, we will give further devolved powers to mayoral authorities of combined authorities of a population of over 1 million. That seems to be the watershed. Obviously, Cornwall doesn't meet that. So yes, keep trying, but I think everyone should be aware that is it next week the white paper's due out? I think next week the government are issuing a white paper on the devolution offer and their devolution thing. So I think we could quickly find this overtaken by events when the government set out formally. Jim McMahon, who is the minister responsible for devolution, has very clearly said, and said at a meeting with the County Councillors Network just 2 weeks ago, that his preference is for the whole of Devon and the whole of Cornwall, not just Devon, not just Cornwall and Plymouth, and that's his preference. Will he get his way? I don't know, but.
Thank you. And I was encouraged to see actually in the House, I think it was yesterday, our MP, Noah Law, asking a question of this, and in fact there was some confidence given around non-mayoral authority devolution. So encouraged by that.
That wasn't what was said. So what he said was Cornwall has already got a non-mayoral. What he was referring to, because we asked for clarity afterwards as Cornwall Council, what he was referring to was the latest non-mayoral devolution deal, which Cornwall has now got, which only got a couple of weeks ago. And that's it's not a level 3 deal, it's a level 2 plus. That's the adult education. So, because that we all saw that, and that was it. That comment was specifically referring to the non-mayoral level 2 plus deal, not to a future level 3 deal without a mayor.
Well, I thank you for that, but we'll look for some clarification on that from the MP, I think. So as I'll propose then that we go with this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kenny, all in favour? Any objections? Councillor Gooch, object. Any abstentions? Sorry? Councillor Morris abstain. Thank you. So moving on then, Mayor's announcements. So just a couple of bits and pieces really. Firstly, some of you might note that I gave a Mayor's Award of Excellence in Hospitality to Zaman's Restaurant on Henver Road at the end of last week, following them entering into a rather, or being invited to enter into a rather prestigious national competition, and then becoming in the top 10 in the country. One might say that they're the best in Cornwall, and then, and that combined with some of their brilliant community work that they've done over the last few years, I felt it only appropriate to go and recognise some of the good work of Mo, his brothers and the team there at Zaman. So well done to them, and thank you for having me. And then the only other one I just wanted to, on the record please, just a huge thank you to our events coordinator Melissa, who did an absolutely exceptional job of the Christmas light switch on last Friday. It was a completely different venue, something completely new. We've not done it before, lighting up the Killer Court for the first time in a particularly spectacular fashion. And I know I threw in a few curveballs towards the end in terms of wanting, wanting snow machines and, arches to frame the event. And you know what? I think it went down really well. She really absolutely knocked it out of the park. So please note that, and our thanks go to Melissa for her extraordinary work on that event. And I don't know if we have any official footfall numbers, but it looked like the biggest ever. So so well done to her and all the staff, in fact, that helped out across the weekend, putting that up and helping take it down as well, including the grotto on the Sunday, which was fully booked. Okay, so financial statements then, and these have already been seen and approved, so this is just for noting. I'm happy to propose these. Do I have a seconder? Councillor North, all in favour? Any objections or abstentions? Did I see a hand up for you?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying it all the time.
Okay. So, are you voting for? You are voting for. Okay, thank you. Good.
I was reading. I was apologise, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gardner.
There's over £1,000 for vehicle rentals. Haven't we just bought new vehicles? Why are we renting vehicles in December?
Anne?
We've only purchased 2 of our vehicles, which we purchased last year, and the 3 new vehicles that we have are all on leases.
Thanks, Anne. Moving on.
And this is just a preference. I would just so each month we'll see that figure in the monthly thing. Can you just put it down as lease, because it just looks like we've gone out and rented a load of hire cars.
Okie doke. So moving on then to open session for Cornwall Council's verbal, written or table reports. I see 3 in our midst. Who would like to go first? Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, just a brief update of what's been going on in my division. The modular units at Tregunnell are all full, as you well know. I've not received any complaints so far. In fact, I've had letters of how well people have integrated there and how there aren't been any problems, and that's from the residents on the Trevemper estate. So far, so good with that. The development at Trevemper itself, sorry, I should have said Tregunnell for the modular units. The development at Trevemper, which is over 300 houses, 100 of which will be affordable term, are ongoing and are selling very, very well. That will be another 12, 18 months in development before it's built out. Yeah, I've got a flood outside the Rose Garden on the footpath on Edgecombe Avenue at the bottom. I've reported it a couple of times. The gullies need clearing out and diner rod in the drains. We get a little bit exasperated with highways, but I've been promised today that they will get on that as soon as possible. The fountain has stopped working and I'm chasing that up in the boating lake. It seems to work for about 6 months, 12 months and then packs in again. I've had a meeting with McDonald's, the restaurant up at opposite Proud Park. They're very keen to get involved in street cleans and helping with Doorstep Green and doing some clear ups there. And we've just, and some of you will know, we've just had a message saying that the car park at Tregunnell is going to be devolved to Cormac. I've got assurances that everything will stay exactly the same, apart from, at the moment, they're saying they want to do winter charging, which I'm not happy with at all, and I shall be making those representations at the upcoming scrutiny meeting as well. So that's it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Councillor Monk? Councillor Kenny.
Couldn't agree more with you about Tregunnell Hill and the winter charging. The problem with when you do devolve these car parks, Cormac takes over and they introduce winter charging on Towan Headland without any consultations. That is the problem. The reason there is no charging in Tregunnell Hill is that nobody uses it. I mean, it's a complete waste of space. And occasionally they were using it for some businesses were using it to pick up their stuff and get rid of it. Other than that, it's just not used, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. It just seems...
No, I understand that. I think, I mean, it's Councillor Gardner's area, but from my understanding with the Town and Headland one, the winter charge in there was more to sort of combat the problems we've had for years with antisocial behaviour up there. I might stand corrected if Councillor Gardner might come in and correct me on that. The Cornwall Council do have a say when they transfer them to Cormac about the charging and the pricing structure. Broadly, it's kept exactly in line with what Cornwall Council are and were charging. They're not allowed to start putting prices up or charging more. This is simply a cost-effective way of running the car parks better using ANPR, and then frees up our limited parking attendance. We should have 45 across Cornwall. We've never been able to employ more than 32. Those posts have just remained unfilled. So this is a way, partly a way, of managing the car parks using technology, managing them in a more efficient way, but also allowing the existing traffic wardens that we've got to go to the streets around here, for instance, and start addressing those nuisance parkers who park on WL lines, block junctions, and really sort of tackle that type of behaviour.
Be contentious. I think you probably know that we thought that Tregonwell Hill should actually be charged the same price as the internal car parks, because it is an overflow car park, the internal car parks. I'm interested when you say it's going to be the same prices, because I mean, Cornwall Council has to go through this approving a traffic order, and Cormac doesn't. So how are they going to keep in step? I mean, I don't know.
I get that's an internal legal matter that I've not got the overall knowledge on. But
so just, I was going to cover it in mine, but on top of Tregonwell Hill, it'll also be Dane Road, Albany Road, and Belmont car parks. So there's 4 in Newquay. The sort of lease to Cormac is being written now, and I believe it specifically specifies in that lease that they have to track Cornwall Council's rates on the car park charging. Now, I'm not sure if that means they could, jump it up a band or whatever, because there's this ABC band thing, but it means they've got a rate track. As Ollie said, the whole reason for doing it is because Cormac can use ANPR, whereas council can't. Why this might make a difference for town councils, of course, is that at the moment this town council is paying Cornwall Council to enforce using traffic wardens. In theory, in time, town councils could lease to Cormac, and Cormac could enforce using ANPR as opposed to that. So something for the town councils to think of. There is a few town councils actually that already use ANPR. They're allowed to do it because they've owned their car parks before 1987, which is apparently when the rules changed. So Marazion, for example, are using ANPR before 1987. But the whole premise is you'll still be able to use all your season passes and that sort of stuff. You'll still get your residence discount, your 50% discount on a monthly or a seasonal pass, as happens now. And you'll follow the same, it'll track the Cornwall Council car park rates. The only difference people will see is it'll be number plate recognition rather than enforcement officers.
So effectively, we're just keeping the 3 main car parks in Hall Street in Newquay.
Well, so the whole premise this has been done behind is this has been done in car parks where they know they've got issues with enforcement and they know they've got other issues as well. So there's some on the list that have got antisocial behaviour, for example, some of the ones that are further out, and they've picked the car parks that are getting the least frequent visits from enforcement officers. Obviously, the enforcement officers work in the centre of town. That's why they've gone sort of Tregonwell Hill, the ones a bit further out, because we're lucky if some of those at the moment get 1 visit a day.
Okay.
Which is the whole premise of it.
Just conscious of time, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, a few months ago, Councillor Monk, I emailed you and copied in and asked a question for the next council meeting, is if you could give update and details as to the BMX track that you've proposed in Trenance Gardens, please.
Yeah, I haven't proposed a BMX track in Trenance Gardens.
Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to go back, not to Councillor Bank. I want to go and address Councillor Gardner. It is for it that we are allowing these car parks being transferred. And what's interesting about what you're mentioning in the conversation a minute ago, who owns ownership? You're mentioning Cormac. People in Newquay chastise us already, and Cornwall Council and Newquay Town Council, with the current prices on the car parks. Now, whether you like it or not, now to induce paying in the winter months and talking about people not going to come round and penalise, poor old Wendy and very few people, which we are already struggling on this town council, where we don't have sufficient traffic wardens. And if the car parks are going to be transferred and are transferred to Cormac, then let's change those signs to ensure that they are chastised and not we or Cornwall Council, first and foremost. Now, before I go any further, because it is a major point, and if you're going to say, Councillor Gard, you just said, and having people coming around and coming around and escorting, looking at empty car parks in the winter, which cost X amount of money for an individual to come round, there is no point. Because at this moment in time here in Newquay, at this time of year, the vast majority are empty. Yes, indeed, we do have, as Councillor Monk mentioned, areas of concern, but they are primarily in the summer, at Lower Fistral, other areas potentially, and the problems in the centre of town is overcrowding. But I disagree. I think the charging of these car parks in the winter months, in my mind, is absolutely a waste of time, and it shouldn't have happened.
Thank you, Councillor Googe. Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Googe, and this is why I mentioned that I don't think it's acceptable that these car parks should be charging in the winter. And Councillor Gardner will talk about this. I'm sure Councillor Fitter will have something to say as well. I don't mind the use of technology to better enforce those outlying car parks and redeploy the resources into the town centre to stop some of that nuisance parking, but I definitely don't agree that those car parks should be charging for winter.
Yeah, I agree with
Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Gardner.
So I was just going to say I agree with Councillor Monk. We're both opposed to winter charging. We're told, Councillor Monk and I had a meeting this afternoon about it. I don't think winter charging is going to come in, not with us opposing it. We are opposing it where we are. I agree with you. We don't want charging in those car parks in the winter.
Councillor Thompson, you've already had your bite at the cherry, so I think I'm going to move on. Other than to say, I have to say, I'm really not happy with this ANPR situation. I've had a number of tourists who have visited our town over the summer, made contact with me following fines that they've received after the fact. And you know what? This is a really bad and dangerous road that we're travelling down with these ANPR cameras, and that will be the overriding image that tourists in the future have of our town, is not the wonderful coastline, not the brilliant offering for holidaymakers, but in fact the parking fine, the faceless parking fine that you can't get hold of anyone, you can't negotiate with anyone, even if you're 30 seconds past. So, I have to say I'm dead against this, and I know that Newquay Town Council made representations to Cornwall Council, who I understand used the Little Fistral car park as a model for this, and it was said to be an exemplar model. I think we strongly disagree with that as a town council, and we made those representations at the time. Unfortunately, they were ignored by Cornwall Council and presumably by our Cornwall councillors. Councillor Gardner, would you like to do your Cornwall Council?
Yeah, I mean, people might like to know, for example, that Little Fistral car park has tripled its income by not raising tariffs, just by making the people that should pay. And that's what it's all about. It's not about charging those people. Like anything, if you go over, you're going to get fined. But it's only the people that haven't been paying that have got something to worry about. So my first point is Whitehead Ross in the middle of the town. I'm sure Councillor Kenny and Councillor Wright will know already, because it's a community levelling up project. But they now have an IT suite which is open to anybody. You can just walk in off the street, say, "Can I use a computer?" The answer is yes. And it can be used for anything, but if you want to use it for things like employment job searching, writing CVs, that sort of thing. There are people in there to help you. So 18 computers there available for the use of anyone. Second point is path on the Barrowfields. So there's a whole suite of Barrowfields improvements going on. The path's going on, linking up what's been the very popular path along the sort of road edge, or the road side of the Barrowfields, but now carrying that on further down to Lusty Leys Corner and onwards. A couple of people have written to me asking about the tarmac finish. It's only an interim, so all those resin paths have tarmac underneath them, and then they go and put the resin on top. I'm told the resin's going to get done in the spring. They need slightly warmer weather in order to get the best finish on that resin, so it will match the same colour and the same finish, and the same provider, who are a great local company, and we know them because they did the resin on the Killicourt, and the idea is to do that. The next thing people will see is the whole of the fence all the way around is being replaced. So the chain link fence, which has reached the end of its useful life, that's all being replaced. And in addition, some of the planting is going to be improved. There's planting at the sort of Henver Road corner. There's also planting in the sort of, there's a separate little section of land to the left of the Tolcan Beach Road that goes down. There's a little area there which has become all overgrown, a couple of benches. That's all getting refurbished and redone. And some of you will know about the monolith project, and one of the monoliths is going on that particular part. So we'll see that all over the winter months. That the whole aim is to finish that project completely by the 31st of March. Play Park, Trenance Play Park. So we did the public consultation. We closed. There was one clear winner. It was the nautical themed one. So it was the one with the whale and stuff. For whoever voted for that one, it was had like 3 times the amount of votes as anywhere else. But we've just paused on that a little bit. The idea was to start after the half term, but there was quite a vociferous small group of people who said that the park didn't have enough options there for children with mobility issues. So we've gone away to look at that. It's a trade-off, and I will say it is a trade-off. Put it this way: for some of the bits of equipment I've seen on the price list, for one bit of equipment that is purely for wheelchairs, we would have to take away 4 pieces of other equipment in order to facilitate that in both space and in budget, just because of that. And so the team have gone to look at it and to come back with options, but that's what's holding us up at the moment. They're doing their due diligence, and they're having it quite rightly. They are looking at that and seeing what they can do. The people
30 seconds, Councillor Gardner.
Well, I can stop now if you want, but people will notice the murals around town. That's part of the Experience Newquay project. Third one just finished, and the aim is we've got funding for another one between now and March, and then the aim is to do another 6 or 8 after that. Thank you to Boardmasters Foundation for their support, and to the Experience Newquay project, which we will be continuing for another year. So for those of you that enjoyed that project, we've got another year of funding, and you'll see lots more murals around town. Next one will be on Gover Lane.
Thank you. Any questions of Councillor Gardner, Councillor Googe, and then Councillor Thompson?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Good, nice to hear the report. I'm a big advocate of the Narrowcliffe and improvements around that area. I have one major concern, and listening to you, and I'm pleased any improvements in Newquay is well accepted. On Narrowcliffe, between Tesco Express, the bus station, and the corner of the road going to Lusty Leys has 3 entry exit points, and I'm pleased that you did mention wheelchairs and mobility scooters, because this is my point. At those 3 entry points, because of the grass and the roadblock, the actual hedges, and it's come from a lot of people I've spoken to, they have to egress forward. That puts them potentially in front of cars coming along. So imagine Tesco Express, you've got a high level thing to overgrown. People in wheelchairs and mobility scooters have to edge forward. As you're coming up from the roads and turning around the roundabout, there was only 10 feet before they could potentially hit a mobility scooter or a wheelchair. As you go down past the bus station on Narrowcliffe, where the other entries are going across, again, there is little visibility, of which when cars are picking up speed could also be to a mobility and a wheelchair operative an issue. And my third one, as you come round to Lusty Glaze, the entry point again for mobility and wheelchairs is only about 25 feet, which is a potential hazard. So please, I'd be interested to take it back, but if we're going to do improvements on Narrowcliffe, that's an accident waiting to happen sometime in the future for mobility and wheelchair operatives on those 3 junctions. And I have had people asking me to address it, and I think this is an ideal opportunity. Please take that away, and if we can do something about it, cut the hedges down, better visibility, so they can safely cross that road. It'd be much appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Googe.
Can I respond? Can I just respond
sure.
to that? Yeah, all I'd say, I totally agree, Councillor Googe. I think the way we designed roads and pavements and access points a few years ago is completely different to what it is now. That area, of course, is all being redesigned, and work will start on that bit of Narrowcliffe in January. Of course, now there's all rules on dropped curbs, all the sort of textured surfaces, approaches, all that sort of stuff for people with visibility issues. And I know all that's been incorporated. So I hope what we're going to see, but I will feed that back, but I hope what we're going to see is improvements there.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, as I'd included in the email, Councillor Gardner as well, with the BMX track, the cycle path that Councillor Gardner referred back to me and said no, he couldn't comment on it. That was Councillor Monk's baby. I'm just intrigued as to the plans I'd seen for it, as to apparently it doesn't exist. Councillor Gardner, and you've got an exciting tree planting project as well in Trenance Gardens that I think the SIL funding is being applied for along in parallel with the bike track.
So Trenance Gardens is not my area. I've got the tennis centre. I think the bit of land that you're referring to is actually in Kevin Towell's area. I haven't applied for any tree planting funding. All I do, it's not my place. It's not my place to say. But there's been no SIL application from me for Trenance Gardens. Well, there was 152,000 for the play park. That was mine for Trenance.
Councillor Brooke.
Thank you. I'd just like to add to Councillor Googe's excellent point about the visibility on Narrowcliffe. The point that Councillor Googe was making was about disability. I'd also like to add the additional vulnerabilities that I note on numerous occasions, because I drive that route many times during the week. It's about young children, people pushing pushchairs, other vulnerable users, but also infrequent users, particularly tourists who are not aware of the dangers of what the visibility on Narrowcliffe can bring, particularly if they are too busy having a good time on holiday and not necessarily looking out for traffic which is closer than they realise. So all I would really say, it's not a question to Councillor Gardner, it's just simply a statement, just please include additional vulnerable people in that request.
Councillor Monk, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think the message is crystal clear, and I agree. I walk over there 3 times a day, as anyone sees me walking my dog. and I myself, when I come out at the corner on Lusty Glaze Road, it's always, if a car turns into Lusty Glaze Road quickly, it's a bit of a dodgy junction, yeah, and I agree with Councillor Gardner, though, the way we design stuff now is different. However, they need to incorporate that into demand. Just something I thought I'd mention as well, and it'd be worth the Town Council, the clerk asking, is due to cliff erosion, when they put the new fence up, which I believe won't be till the back end of next summer, they're going to move it back in line with the 100-year cliff erosion plan. Some of it not far, some of it up to 10 metres. So we are going to lose a bit of space up there. It'd just be worth writing a letter to the clerk writing a letter to try. I've not seen a map of it yet. I've just speak with the guys who are doing it, and I've been informed that the space is going to be nibbled up a bit in line with the cliff erosion plan. So it'd be just worth seeing what the extent of it, what they're proposing to do. I'm not saying.
Okay, thank you. I think we've seen a proposal from that on that, haven't we? Yeah, we have. Yeah, I've seen a presentation for sure. Just before I go to Councillor Fitter for his Cornwall Councillor update, I note that there was an outstanding action from the October full council meeting for Councillor Gardner to give this full council an update on the airport.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you where we are. There is an offer on the table, a partnership offer on the table. That is being, sort of the legals of that are being discussed at the moment. We've got a workshop on it tomorrow morning. The council's undergoing due diligence on that, so that's both the financial teams looking at the offer and also the legal teams. And that's both our internal and external legal teams. And the plan is for that to be discussed to go to scrutiny on the 15th of January now, and then it's penciled in. I don't know whether it will or not, but potentially for it to go to cabinet for a cabinet decision on the 17th of January. So that's where we are at the moment. I can't get into the semantics of the actual deal itself, but it is very much you know, as I've said before, as I said in the briefing I did a few months ago, it is a partnership offer that's on the table, and I hope everyone had the chance to look at the land usage blueprint paperwork that was made public, and also take part in the survey which was public. That's the sort of timeline we're working to at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Fitter, did you want to come in? Thank you. Got 4 minutes for your update, Councillor Fitter, and then obviously questions. Thank you.
Just to let you know, sir, and I think your clerk is aware that I've attended a meeting at Colin at Quinchell at St Colin Minor this evening, and people mentioned the problems in Priory Wood again. Young adults have been sort of sitting down there and setting fire, and they've actually set a fire up onto the Tormacadden surface and burnt the Tormacadden surface, and various items and debris have been left behind. Just to let you know that regretfully, and I think Councillor Kenny attended as well, we opposed the granting of a permanent licence for the Sky Bar on the Barrowfields, but regretfully once again the licensing committee decided in their wisdom that it was appropriate to give them a permanent licence to operate at least twice a year from now on to whenever, subject of course to planning permission. They will have to apply for planning permission.
Sorry, is that the Sky Bar above Watergate? Is that what you
Yes, that's it.
Sorry,
yeah, the Sky Bar, but they'll have to apply for planning permission again. But it's I find it regretful, because I think any permanent developments out there is creeping development between the gap between Whipsterderry and Watergate Bay. So I think it's something that I personally will continue to object to. The Green Ridge application, I mentioned it to you, sir, because lodged because Newquay Town Council didn't offer any objections, said no objections, but didn't actually support it. It was approved at the committee 4-5. Thankfully, due to the brilliant support of the local MP Noah Law, the matter has now been taken out of Cornwall Council's hands at this moment, and Secretary of State Angela Rayner has asked Cornwall Council not to issue any planning permission on it until such times as she's had an opportunity to review the paperwork and the background to the application. So it's gone to the Secretary of State's office at this moment in time, which is very welcome, and I thank Noah Law for his support in the application, which wasn't welcomed by the community at Colin, you see, and indeed, you know, so these things. Cornwall Council's Coastal Protection Team have offered objections to the discharge of Condition 2 at the Whipsterderry Cove site, so I cannot imagine now that the planning officer will be able to agree to the discharge of that condition, because they've now come back, it's on the portal, and they have objected to the application as submitted. So I don't imagine for one moment that the officer will be prepared to go against that advice. as they have in previous occasions. The Watergate Bay car park, as you know, and has been mentioned by my two colleagues from Cornwall Council, Watergate Bay car park is on the list. This I shall be vigorously protesting. This Watergate car park must remain in Cornwall Council's control. It is too important. We cannot risk the damage that may occur to the economy of Watergate Bay. And I've been speaking to the major stakeholders in the Bay, and they both expressed total horror and are willing to engage with Cornwall Council. And if Cornwall Council think they have a problem, they will lease it off Cornwall Council, and they will run it in the interest of the community of Newquay, because so many people go out there, the surfers, etc., and so forth. So this is a retrograde step, and certainly I will be vigorously protesting, as will members of the local community, because this is short-sighted policy by Cornwall Council. Beryl Bikes, at a meeting I had yesterday at St Columbine Minor, we've also reinforced again that we would like Beryl Bikes to extend a docking station to the bottom of the village. Bikes now get left at the bottom of the village down by the church because they've been taken from the top and right there. And so we have this nonsense of the Beryl Bike people having to collect them and take them at the top. So I would hope that many thanks, Mr Town Clerk, sir, to the members of your town, your support services who attended the switching on of the lights at St Columbine Minor yesterday evening. They were manning their stools and they were brilliant, and it was a very successful evening, and St Columbine Minor community came together and attended several hundred, well, not several hundred, but certainly 200 was there, and it was a very good evening. It was had by all.
Last 30 seconds, please, John.
Yep, and I've concluded now, sir, my report to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't agree with you more with regards to Watergate Bay car park, and and the need for these car parks to remain in the community for the benefit of the community. Councillor Slade.
Yeah, hi. You basically cleared up the 2 points I was keenly interested in. One was what's happening with Whipsey, which is good news, and the other one, I'd just like to add my voice to the concerns about Watergate car park. I think the geography of Watergate means that most people drive there, and if there's any kind of deterrent, it's only going to be a detriment to the economy of Watergate. On top of the fact that I think they'd be pushing their luck to try and start charging for a car park with no marked bays, no. It's a field, it's not a car park. So, yeah, full support, and hopefully that won't happen. What about Atlantic Walk?
I think that one of the concerns is that at the moment we can speak to Cornwall Council themselves when there's problems, as problems do occur in the summer. It'll be different if we have to speak to a private operator who will be running that car park, because certainly, of course, Cormac won't be running them. They're having them over, and then they're going to send them, pass it on to some suggestion. There's a firm from Birmingham, I believe, has been mentioned, could be well interested in doing it. So that is one of the dangers. And we also, from the military point of view, of course, there is a military infrastructure running under that car park up to the hole in the ground. So that's a reason why, we must protect that car park. Full stop. There's no, and I sincerely hope, sir, that Newquay Town Council will robustly move in behind it. Thank you.
We will pick that up. Thank you, John. Councillor Kenny.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff. I think the Whipsey decision is tomorrow, because that's when they have to make it by, and we'll cross your fingers that we've all objected. I hadn't realised until tonight, and we've had this discussion, that all of what used to be our long stay car parks are included in this scheme. So I don't think Watergate is isolated. They're all going. And that's a completely different issue than them just saying we're going to take Watergate, which I always thought was going to be targeted anyway. So that's it is an interesting approach. We don't know what we're going to say about that. And on a happier note, the Beryl Bikes, I'll say this to Councillor Gardner because it's very much your baby. I was chatting yesterday or the day before to the bloke who maintains them, and they have been incredibly successful in the Newquay area. And I understand they have taken them away from St Austell, where they haven't been successful. Don't know why not. And they've moved them to Newquay. So great.
25, an extra 25.
An extra 25, as long as they don't get thrown over the cliff. We've only lost 2, I think, so far. But I think it's been a great success, and it's well used.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Morris, do you have a question for Councillor Fitter?
No, it's just one thing. Can I have a couple of minutes with John just before he nips out? Because I need to ask him a question.
I'm sure John will do his best. Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Fitter, before we let him go? No, thank you, John, as always. A pleasure. And Merry Christmas to you if I don't see you. Sorry, Alan. We're, we've got a full agenda this evening. Okay, so thank you. Moving on to item 11 then, which is committee minutes and reports, and we start with governance and resources. So I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor, Councillor Margaret North.
Obviously, you've had the minutes in your pack for the last week. Let me have a look. Do I go for the budget first? And
minutes for noting.
Minutes for noting. So I'll propose the minutes. We have a seconder. All in favour of the minutes? Yeah. Any questions from anybody? No? Will I go through the
grants?
For your
recommendation.
So 11A1, note the recommendation for the precept budget and general fund. It was proposed by myself. Resolved unanimously to recommend to full council a gross expenditure of £3,231,614, a precept of £2,815,215, a general fund balance for 3 months, which is the minimum level we need to keep in the pot. So the impact on our residents will be a nil increase as set out in the draft papers. So I'm happy to propose that if we've got a seconder. Councillor Williams, all in favour? Oh, question? Yeah. Just testing. Yes, carry on.
Councillor Gardner.
Apologies, I did send these questions in, but obviously Anne's been really busy. So a couple of questions. First is around the HR committee.
Sorry, Councillor Gardner, I believe the RFO has responded to your email.
Apologies, I haven't seen that. When was that sent? Okay, I've got one specific one which I didn't cover in that email, and it's around salaries and wages. A £48,475,000 increase on wages seems quite large, and I know it's one of the reasons you put on that is there is a higher role of HR manager in post. That's already in, so why would that be that person's already in post? Why would that be a budget increase for next year? I just think that seems excessive. But my wider point is on, and it's on the precept, and I need to understand the numbers. Is it seems that the £250,000 rise in precept, which is what we're proposing, is being covered by a rise in the base rate or rise in the number of properties. Am I correct in thinking that? And I think it's an 850 property rise between last year, or between this year that we're in now and next year. Is that, we haven't built 850 new properties in Newquay. So can you just explain that for us of where those 850 properties are coming from? I'm assuming part of that breakdown is the additional holiday properties, but I suppose what I need to know is what is the fallback? There are many ways to avoid this double council tax, many ways, and we're seeing evidence of it already. You know, being put on the open market, for example, gives you 12 months not having to pay. And the estate agents are already putting it. So what do we need as a success rate for these books to balance on the holiday property collection rate, and how much of those 850 properties does that make up?
So before I go to the RFO, I think I'll note is firstly on the staff increase. Of course, there are annual increases, and we just had the NI increase announced, which will be part of that number.
That's a separate
in
budget
terms
line.
of
It's not part of that number. It's a separate budget line.
Sorry, are you the chair of this meeting?
Well, you're saying
if you're going to interrupt, Councillor Gardner, I'm going to give you a warning.
Well, it's not true.
I'm going to give you a warning. Thank you. Sorry,
and
what-
we do have a point of
No,
order.
no, no.
process.
So point of order,
Okay,
you have
okay.
to name the particular item that you are referencing in the point
what
of
I'm
order.
referencing is if something is
No,
said
no,
which
no,
is-
that doesn't work.
Right. If something is said which you want me to go through the orders and name it, right? If something's said which is factually incorrect, I have to correct that. The national insurance increase is a separate budget line to that 48,000. It is. It
You
is.
talked about the rise in staff costs, which will include
Right.
the national insurance.
It
Let
doesn't
me
include
answer
national
your. Let me
insurance,
answer
Chair.
your
It doesn't.
second. Let me answer your second question, which is that given that there is a number of second home tax that is coming in and the risk around that, and there is a high risk, as you've pointed out, you'll note that that isn't part of the ongoing budget. And in fact, that money is going into reserves so that we aren't reliant on it. So if it doesn't come in, it is not going to have an impact on the ongoing costs of running costs of the budget. Is that correct, Anne? Yeah, I'll pass over to the RF.
Just for clarity in terms of the national insurance contributions, they are separate budget lines. The 48,000 is mentioned the HR manager's role, and that's because in previous budgets it had been an HR administrator, and the HR manager's role is obviously senior, and that went through committee, which is why there is a budget increase in terms of that post and that role. And then the rest of it does add on to spinal column point increases, which was a result of the pay and grading structure that was agreed a couple of years ago. So that's what that 48,000 is.
Not national insurance contribution.
It's not the national.
That's what I said. Okay, thanks. Just on the second part, just so I understand, how many of those properties, those 850 change in properties, are holidays, and how many are just standard properties that we think have been built?
So there are 788.96 properties increase from last year's. So it's not. So that's the number. 623 of those are second homes. Cornwall Council has the collection rate that it gives within that figure, and that's how it calculates the Band D figure that it provides us. And that is where the percentage is. The Cornwall Council collection rate is 99.1%, apart from on MOD properties where it is 100%. The precept that we put in for next year is what we will receive from Cornwall Council regardless of the collection rate. That is the collection rate that Cornwall Council, so if there was a lower collection rate, that would be Cornwall Council's issue, not Newquay Town Council's issue. In terms of people getting around that second homes, that's why we have budgeted an 85% decrease in next year's second home, because we felt that that was significant. It was fairly easy to get around that, and we didn't want to factor it into future budgets. So I think in terms of where we are with the second homes and that element, we quite covered ourselves quite well. Does that help? The total, just for the, so based on the figures, the total increase in the Band D properties was £237,462, but 185,000, just over 185,000, comes from the second homes tax element. But next year we've reduced that significantly in our budget.
Thanks, Anne. Councillor Googe.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Interesting, these topics came up only a while ago. My concern is that here we are today on the budget meeting. We had a previous budget meeting, and where most of us have already known and well aware. These reports have been on and in the email structure where questions could have been posed prior to tonight's meeting and potentially answered. It is disappointing, Councillor Gardner, that you were unavailable to come at the last previous meeting of the budget, which in fact all of this was addressed prior to tonight. So we are many of us listening to regurgitated questions and answers that was not needed. Yes, well you can and you're welcome to, but you had an opportunity through the budget to pose questions to Anne prior to tonight, where the rest of us are sitting here listening to you on your questions, where if you were here a few weeks ago, it would be nugatory tonight and we wouldn't need to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Googe. Do we have any other?
Can I write a reply on that, please, seeing as my name's been mentioned?
By all means.
I don't want to get in slang match. You know, the way that we've always run this, Councillor Googe, is obviously not every councillor can make it to every meeting. I thought we were here in the you know, the point of openness, and you know, some of the questions are because things change and we get asked questions by the members of the public, and I feel it a bit sad that you're discouraging councillors from asking questions at what is potentially the most important meeting of the council. I did fire some emails, some questions in via email, but other things have come up. So, you know, please don't have a go at me for asking questions. It's our duty and our responsibility as councillors.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kenny.
At the risk of getting the ire at Councillor Gorge, I wanted to, first of all, to thank you very much and for the report. I thought it was very useful. I have to say it's taken me some time to plough through it, which is why I've got some questions for tonight. I think the first thing I was going to ask about the base rate as well, because normally that would mean the number of new houses that were being built. And I have felt that for the last couple of years they haven't actually given us credit for all their houses, so heaven knows how they work it out. But by putting the second homes into that figure, which is what I was going to ask, it's actually confused the issue. So we can't use it as a measure of how many new homes. And the reason that you can keep the payment of council tax, not council tax itself, is because there are more houses sharing the cost. Is that roughly it? It would have helped me, I think, for just next time, not this time, when we have actuals. I know they are in the report, and I went through them an awful time trying to find them all out. But on your summary page, where you've got 2023-4, you've got the budget. It would be more useful to have the actuals so we can see the difference between years. And I suppose the last thing was just a point I wanted to make is that we are not freezing council tax. We are putting the precept up by over 9%. It is the use of the second home dividend that is managing, coincidentally in the year before an election, as keeping the Band D payment the same. I assume that E, F, G and H will all have an increase. Nobody's going to get an increase? Interesting. But we are in fact increasing the I have voted for it and I will continue to vote for it, but I would point out that we are not freezing council tax. We've put it up by over 9% and we're planning to put it up by over 5% next time.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Any other questions on the budget report? No? Okay, fair enough. I just want to personally pass my thanks on to the clerk and the RFO, Anne, who have worked tirelessly on this particular report, getting it to us at record time, so as to ensure that the majority of councillors were both able to attend this meeting, but also, you know, prior to that, putting on many additional informal meetings to ensure that all councillors would have an opportunity to engage, ask questions, you know, ahead of tonight. So please, thank you to both of you. I know I don't underestimate how much work that's gone into that. Councillor Morris, did you have a question?
No, just a statement. All of the extra meetings were at a school time and impossible for me to appear at because I have children and my partner works.
There were a number of, I believe at least 2 of them were recorded that you could have watched back should you have wished. So, but, you know, point taken. Councillor North, did you want to?
And also you could have come to any of the committee meetings where the budget was being discussed. You know, C&T had a budget meeting, GNR had a budget meeting, E&F, so you would have heard all this information.
Again, we're not, even if we were allowed to put anything in, we would just be completely
I'm sorry,
ignored because we're not on the committee.
That's absolute rubbish, right? Everyone in this chamber and those that aren't here presently were offered the opportunity to engage in this budget numerous times. Every committee had budgets twice. There were several informal meetings, and had you not been able to make any of those meetings and asked the RFO or the clerk, they would have indeed made time for you because they put that offer out there as well. So I will not accept that you were not engaged. Councillor Brooke.
Can I just make the point? Everyone's busy. Everyone's got busy lives, and I think if there's issues about either worries about attendance or not attendance, we can communicate these by email. I mean, I can't see the issue. I think we should just move on.
Okay, so we've got a proposal. Councillor Monk.
Yeah, I just find it a little bit insidious that we seem to be suggesting that how dare we ask questions at the budget meeting about the budget, and we should all be very good children, look at the emails, attend meetings that some of us, for the right reasons, can't attend, and how dare you. And I just don't think that's the right way. Of course we're going to ask questions at this meeting, as we have done in time immemorial. It always comes down to the final meeting to make our points, to ask our questions when the officers are here, and I don't see anything wrong with that. And to suggest that there's something wrong with that, and it's almost trying to deny, in my opinion, trying to deny democracy to the people of Newquay. So I take offence to that
It's a good
situation.
try, Councillor Monk. What I would say is what I've just said to Councillor Morris is that every opportunity was afforded everyone in this room. The fact that Councillor Morris has just pointed out that he feels he wasn't engaged at all was the point that I was raising. I've got no problem with questions. I believe Councillor Googe was the one that raised the queries around questions around this, not I. So I hope that you'll retract your statement, as it seemed to be directed towards me as the chair of the meeting.
I think you are the chair, and I think you, the chair and the vice chair, the way the questioning was going, it seemed to suggest that some of our questions weren't welcome. So I'm sorry, I won't retract the question. I do accept your explanation, however, that it wasn't you personally, but you are in the position of chair, so I have to direct it somewhere.
Okay, Councillor North, did you want to? So we've got you've proposed. We've got a seconder.
Yeah. All in favour of? Are we going to do item 1A1 through to D?
Cleaner to do it that way.
Yeah.
Individually or? Individually. Okay. So, firstly, we took the vote on. Note the report, which was 11A. There was a. I propose the seconder. Are we all in favour of that? Any objections? 3 objections. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you. Then we're on to, obviously we've raised, we've raised any matters. So 1C was to set a 2025-26 gross expenditure budget. As you can see, it's all written there in your minutes, so I'm going to propose that. We've got a seconder, Councillor Googe. All in favour? Any objections? Any abstention? 4 objections. Thank you. 11D.
Councillor North, can I just intervene? Sorry, can we just ask for a name vote on this one, please?
What? 11A1D? Yep. So 11A1D in your pack to set the 2025-26 precept. I propose, got a seconder, Councillor Williamson. All in favour? Any objections? Any abstentions? Was there an abstention? Councillor Saray, I can't really see your hand. You're sort of really way back off the table. Did you object or abstain? But this last vote we've just done, that was a name vote. 3rd vote this was. So the 3rd vote, if you objected to as well. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see. So 11A2 is a recommendation that GNR, we reviewed the effectiveness of the internal audit and control, including the independence and effectiveness of the independent auditor. So it's for noting. I'm happy to propose. Any seconder for that? Councillor Kenny. Any questions about the internal auditor? We'll just go to the vote. All in favour? Everybody. 11A3. So the recommendation was to release from the EMR grants 2,500 to the Crantock Street Gardens. I'm happy to propose that. We have a second. All in favour of that? That's all passed. 11A4 was the recommendation to release 2,500 of the EMR released for the Nansledden CIC. I think it should read, shouldn't it? Read C in the document, but I think it should be CIC. I'm happy to propose, seconded by Councillor Creek. All in favour? Lovely, thank you. And then the recommendation E is the GNR, the biodiversity policy. It was proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Larson. And yeah, could you let me finish, please? So it was proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Larson. I appreciate it may be some questions, but we want to be brief because we've been through this at so many committees. So any questions?
Oh yes, thank you. Talks about how, in accordance with planning policies and develop planning policies where necessary, but what you're saying there just really doesn't make sense in terms of planning. So if we can perhaps talk about making an amendment to include planning policies. I don't know what the wording would be, but I would not support this policy on the basis of that alone. My other problem is, although it's a very worthy policy, when we first looked at it, and we've discussed this several times, I mean, one of the problems was the road weeding contract. And the discussion was that in order to get this through, you needed to have an alternative for the weeding contract. It never in my wildest imagination thought that the response would be we resolved it by cancelling the contract. Because that is so irresponsible. I'm not going to vote against the policy because I think the policy is a good one, but I am absolutely appalled that we have cancelled the street contract. I think it may not be that bad now, although I've been looking around and I can see the weeds coming. It's going to be dreadful next year. And this idea of, oh, we'll just tell Cornwall Council they've got to do it when we know they're not going to do it, I just think it's wholly and utterly irresponsible. And if you were going to, you need to have an alternative to that contract, because otherwise we're going to have, we've already started, Newquay Clean has already been producing complaints about the state of our roads. It's going to get worse, and I think it was entirely and utterly an irresponsible solution just to cancel it.
Councillor Slade.
Yeah, thank you. The whole point of this policy is that it's the future direction that the council is taking, and that's why it's come to full council, so that we're choosing which directions we go. The whole weed thing was an ENF issue. It was an issue it was on that committee. That committee decided democratically the way they wanted to go with it, and it's not really, I don't think it's a point with this. We're looking for a policy which is the way forward that we go, the way we deal with all of our actions, so that we prioritise biodiversity as opposed to doing anything that's a detriment to it. The weed contract issue was an ENF issue which was sorted out at ENF. We don't debate every single committee issue at full council, otherwise we'd be here forever and we'd have full council meetings every week. So I appreciate the fact that you don't like the decision on that ENF committee issue of that contract, but I think when it comes to voting on this policy of the way the town council is going forward, I don't see it as particularly relevant.
Yeah, sure.
It was the decision I came to. I mean, originally I was thinking I will not vote for this because it may have been a democratic decision, but it was an appalling decision. And I don't know, it didn't come back. I suppose I missed it coming back to council and I didn't see it. But as I say, it's wholly irresponsible and it's going to build us all sorts of trouble in the future. I'm not going to vote against the policy because the policy itself is good. It is the fallout that we hadn't appreciated and that I hadn't appreciated, which I have a problem with. And I don't know what we're going to do about that, so that needs to be solved outside. As I say, we do need some sort of amendment on that planning thing, because that's not right.
Yeah, go on, Councillor Slade.
Well, thank you for that. I think probably the best thing to do is this will probably appear in EMF committee meetings, and you're more than welcome to come to that and contribute.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding on that is that Cornwall Council, many years ago, in an attempt to, be seen to not be using glyphosate, devolved these or offered the weed spraying of the roads around Cornwall to the town and parish councils. They paid the town and parish councils a sum of money to do that, and of course at the time they could say we don't use glyphosate. Unfortunately, 10 years later, I think it is, we are now in a position where Cornwall Council aren't reimbursing us for that, and of course time moves on, people realise the horrific impact of glyphosate on biodiversity. I for one, I previously lived on Ennis Road and witnessed our own contractor spraying where the road meets the curb, but because the curb's so bloody low on Ennis Road where I used to live, they'd spray the pathway as well, and my children would be out there splashing around in poison. And I don't think any parent, would be happy with that. I think the reality is Cornwall Council is responsible for the roads, Newquay Town Council isn't. We agreed to do it many years ago. That wasn't in perpetuity. We decided to stop that. That's got nothing to do with this policy. That is obviously that was a separate motion on ENF. And let's not forget that the importance of this policy, it's around biodiversity, it's around the future of our biodiversity in Newquay in terms, in the importance of pollinators, the importance of our ability to grow food. This is all really important stuff, and it shouldn't be underestimated. What I will note though is, given that we haven't sprayed any of that poison around the streets of Newquay this year, biodiversity seems to have gone mad. And I note that there was even a Cornwall Council report out within the last couple of months noting that. So that's quite interesting. Did you want to come back on that? Sorry, Councillor Stone.
Just really quickly, those are all excellent points of this policy, but the other thing about it is just the message that Newquay gives out. We're as a destination, we're an outdoor destination where, our beaches, our natural environment are our assets. And by sending out this message that not only, are we lucky to have them, but we're actually nurturing them and working to make them more diverse and more, healthy, is it's a great PR thing for the town.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, I believe you had your hand up.
Right, well, I won't be supporting this purely on the decision of that Joanna raised. I physically can't, because the amount I've actually written to my points to the Newquay Voice following Councillor Gardner's article. The weeding in this town is absolutely ridiculous. Some of the places now are up to 4 feet in height. I can't support anything that does not allow it. It was separated and it should have been kept together. So, and to get rid of it, as Councillor Kenny says, to get rid of it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Morris, you're right, actually. The weeding in this town is shocking. Verges are horrendous, and pathways are horrendous. And I would refer you back to your Cornwall councillors, who are both responsible for the verges, the pathways and the road network. So I believe Councillor Williamson, did you have your hand up? No, sorry. Councillor Gardner.
No, as I said, it said in the article, in the email, that you've all received the ones on ENF that I actually forwarded on to you. It does actually mention the weeding on the side of the road, which Newquay Town Council was always responsible for. That is what you've got rid of.
Sorry,
and that is why I won't be supporting you.
The Newquay Town Council was never responsible for weeding on the highways. Newquay Town Council took on a contract to continue to spray glyphosate where the road meets the curb. That is what we've moved away from, not weeding, which we were never responsible for on the road network. Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, there is some good work. There's some good things in this policy. I don't agree with it all, and I'm not going to vote for it. I think my biggest issue is the way that both that and the subsidiary issue of the weeding has passed through the committees. What's actually happened is this one, the biodiversity one's been thrown backwards and forwards, and at no point did this council vote to have this town look in the way it does at the moment. So what actually happened was 4 councillors voted not to go with the contract that was on the table. We then found an alternative, which I thought was fantastic. We found an alternative to use, vinegar basically, and then that was voted against as well by the same 4 councillors. I couldn't really understand that. And then what we tried to do was those of us that were against, ceasing all weed control in Newquay actually said, well, let's take this to full council because it's a really important issue the way our town looks, and it reflects on all of us as councillors, and people contact all of us about it. And that was voted against. We actually tried to get the discussion going in this chamber for every council. So I feel, unfortunately, many of the all councillors should have had a say in it, and they haven't. And that's why I'm not supportive of this. I think the 2 issues were used and programmed to purposely avoid each other, and I don't think they should have been. I don't want to get into the weeds of the weed contract, but we had alternatives on the table, which this policy, the biodiversity policy, supported. We didn't go with it. I think 4 councillors have decided that this town now looks terrible, and I wanted it in front of all of the councillors, and I feel sorry for the councillors in this room now that haven't had a chance to be part of that discussion, because I agree with Councillor Kenny, and we do agree from time to time, Councillor Kenny and I, but we do agree, and we agree on this, that our town, that as a town council, we should be helping to make the town look nicer than it does at the moment.
And I'm sure you'll take that to Cornwall Council, back to Cornwall Council, where they're responsible for the verges that are currently overgrowing all of the pathways in this town. And just as a point of clarification, because there was an inaccuracy in your statement, Newquay Town Council has not stopped weeding in Newquay. In fact, our environment team weed on a daily basis on our land that we are responsible for. All we have ceased doing is spraying poison where the road meets the curb, and
Something like 21Q or something. I know you hate it.
Microphone. Okay, so I will say it's potentially carcinogenic, which is what the scientists say. Thank you. Councillor Larson, thank you.
Thank you, and to those who've given feedback on the policy, which I wrote, and to the others who gave input. It's been through a number of committee meetings, I think for at least 6 months, so everybody's had a chance. Councillor Kenny, I'm sorry you didn't catch that until now. It's been out for a long time. On your point on point 4 and planning, it was carefully worded to say as able, because as a planning committee member, I'm on 2 committees, I'm well aware that we can only speak up in line with planning policy, hence the wording as able. And my other point to raise would be that just the comments we received from residents and the gentleman who attended here and talked, I was quite surprised that he hadn't been told by Cornwall councillors and officers that the verges have never been managed by Newquay. The fact that any verge would be growing 4 feet high has never had anything to do with Newquay Town Council. It has always been Cornwall Council's duty. As our mayor has been saying, the only thing with the roads that Newquay has ever had anything to do with is where the road meets the curb, not the verges. So I'm sorry, no, let me keep talking, thank you. I've listened to yours. And then thank you to those who are going to support this policy. Everybody will make their own decisions or not. But I'd just like to read a few pieces of the wording, which is that as a vibrant seaside town, as Councillor Slade, the Environment Committee Vice Chair, was saying, we have a beautiful coastline and marine environment, and this policy was a step towards us actually as a council making clear across our policies and for our teams the direction they need, that we will help support that in terms of the no synthetic pesticides that are of a carcinogenic, that means cancer-forming nature. We don't need to use that as has been mentioned, and our teams have already been finding other ways to deal with overgrowth in certain areas and keep pathways safe, which we all want. but we're doing it in a way that means we protect our wildlife. We have seals, dolphins in the bay. These sort of pollutants running down our streets ultimately end up impacting their health and the health of children, dogs, etc. in the town, and that's why I've proposed and written this policy, and thank you to everybody for your consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. Councillor Monk and then Councillor Slade finally. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Councillor Larson for her hard work in this, and I think I agree with everything apart from the point that we've been discussing, and simply because we haven't found an alternative method to actually treat and get rid of those weeds in any substantial way across the town. And it has really affected the appearance of the town. I've had people complaining to me about the way that safety is approached, the way the traffic moves through town, the way that they can't see around corners because the way that the weeds are growing, and we're not doing anything about it. And I think if we'd actually come up with a decent way of tackling what we are responsible for doing, I'll probably be minded to vote for this. I totally disagree with some of the inflammatory use of the words poison, and I'm glad that the Mayor has retracted that and said potentially carcinogenic. You have to remember this product is licensed by DEFRA, it's licensed by the European Union. I think you've conflated it between the formula that they use in America, which is a different formula to the one that's used up here, even though it has the same trade name. And I completely disagree that we should stop using this without any form of alternative, and that's what concerns me. Some councillors seem to have a personal vendetta about Cornwall Council and the weeds, and that's fine. I think I would have voted for this if we'd come up with some way of an alternative way of treating it. And we haven't come up with anything that makes any sense to me. So I shan't be voting against it, but I definitely won't be voting for it.
Thank you. Councillor Slade, finally.
Yeah, so just quickly, for anybody, any queries about what they think about some of these pesticides, we're applying the precautionary principle, which a lot of people do. So it's the World Health Organization says it's probably means let's take the precaution and not actually test out if it is. So that's kind of why we're not doing that. As far as how we're going to control our the weeds on our land without using these things, we've got a particularly good environment team and a particularly good environment manager, and we will send him on that task to find a solution, and that's his job, and that's what he'll do. That's what he'll do, because that's his job. So that's about it, really. And then the other thing is I could just say is, can we have this a name vote?
Thank you, Councillor Slade. So we've got a...
So I'll go back. What we have to remember here, we're actually voting on a policy. We're not voting about the issue at ENF. We're voting on a biodiversity policy, but everybody wants to bring in about the weeds. So I've proposed this, Councillor Larson has seconded. So if we all for that? Against? Abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's passed. Thank you, Councillor North. Right, so 11B, minutes of the Community and Tourism Committee. I'll pass you over to Councillor Wright for those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes from the Community and Tourism meeting on the 17th of October. Has anybody got any questions? No, I'd like to propose those minutes. Could I have a seconder? Councillor William. Councillor Saray. All those in favour? Thank you. And same again, I'd like to present the minutes. Oh, sorry.
Did you vote on that, Councillor Morris?
Sailing,
You need to do for against. Councillor Wright, you just need to go for against and abstain.
Okay.
He didn't put his hand up.
Okay. Back to the minutes on the 17th of October. All those in favour? All those against? Or any abstain? Thank you, Councillor Morris. I'd like to present the minutes for the C&T meeting on the 21st of November. Has anybody got any questions? No, I'd like to propose those minutes. I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Saray. All those in favour? Lovely. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So I'll pass you over now to the Chair of ENF for their minutes. Councillor Larson.
Sorry, excuse me. I'd like to propose the minutes of the Environment and Facilities Committee meeting, which was held on the 12th of November. These are in your pack if people have had a chance to review. Would anybody like to second them? Yes, Councillor Slade is seconding. All in favour? Thank you. And any abstentions? Oh, okay.
Right, okay, good, thank you. And pass over to the chair of what might well be described as the hardest working committee on the council, planning and licensing.
The most frequent. I'm not intentionally giving anybody the opportunity to ask any questions, and if you don't mind, I will do it en masse. So I am delighted to propose, with my great gratitude to my team who worked incredibly hard, the minutes for the 28th of August, the 11th of September, the 25th of September, and the 9th of October. All those. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Sarah. And show of hands to note the minutes. Anybody against? Do they dare? Anybody abstaining? No, that's fine. Thank you. It was unanimous.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Okay, so moving on then, Newquaytown Council issues, item 12. We've got a couple of items here. Oh, I put them. So motion 12A is to, we're changing the terms of reference, aren't we? So to change the terms of reference of C&T to add one substitute member because they have had some issues with concurrency recently, and I'm happy to be that substitute member. I'm happy to propose that. Does anyone want a second? Councillor Saray, all in favour? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Goose, then Gardner.
Yeah, although I'm all for the motion, if you're unavailable, could you propose maybe yourself or the deputy mayor would step in, because otherwise we still lose the continuity of that additional person when we actually are not non-quorum.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Although it's a personal thing for you, which I know you're eager. We don't want to change this next year or so on if the other individual is not so concerned.
Eager, yeah. Well, clearly nothing better to do with my evenings. So I think the issue there is it needs to be a named individual to be a substitute, and I certainly don't want to put words in Margaret's mouth to be a substitute. So. And
I would come in. I sub on planning, so I'm not going to sub two committees.
Okay. I think the additional one would probably cover it, and we are only talking about the period between now and the end of the end of April. So, and then that can be reviewed. Councillor Gardner.
It's a bit odd to on these committees to keep putting on an extra person. I just wondered what else had been done to actually address why perhaps the attendance was low. In the past, what we've done is we've looked at alternative evenings, alternative timings, that sort of stuff, to actually get that attendance of the committee members up there. And I just wondered if any of that had been looked at.
So my understanding of that is that the meeting calendar is set in May, and we cannot change that unless it is an in-quorum meeting and we can call an extraordinary meeting, which in fact I believe we did in August with C&T. The issue is that there are a couple of members that aren't turning up regularly to these meetings at all actually. Councillor Morris, I'm sure you'd like to come.
That's the actual issue. If it hadn't have been in August, you probably wouldn't have had the same chair or vice chair that you've got now.
I mean, that point is. Okay, Councillor Morris, thank you. That's enough now. Thank you, Councillor Saray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think perhaps one of the missing details was that actually the day was changed right at the beginning of the year by one member, or a suggestion was made by one member, despite the fact that it couldn't really be made by the rest of the committee. So we're playing catch up until April and doing our best. So yeah,
And we thank the C&T committee members that have. Excuse me, Councillor Morris, please.
There was a point made by Councillor Wright. I have a chance to come back at that.
No, you don't.
You're insinuating it's me. It is, and I've just told you the reason.
Right, Councillor Morris, I won't accept any more outbursts like that. That is your first warning. Thank you. So I think I've proposed, we had a seconder in Councillor Saray, all in favour. Thank you. Any objections? Was that an objection? Yes. Thank you. Good. Moving on, 12B, another motion that I put on this meeting. It's almost like I wanted to be here for the entirety of my birthday, wasn't it? So, as you'll be aware, Newquay Hospital has been running on significantly reduced opening hours this year. I think we all probably understand the reasons for that, and that is largely to do with lack of trained staff to be able to facilitate that. However, that is obviously having a significant operational issue more widely on the healthcare landscape in Newquay and is unfairly penalising the residents and visitors of our great town. So, and I'm recently, just to put some context around the reason I brought this up, is that I'm also a governor at a local school, and the head teacher raised an issue where a very young child broke their arm in the playground late on a Tuesday afternoon. The parents obviously were called, they went to Newquay Hospital, it was shut. They were then advised to go to Bodmin Hospital. They went to Bodmin Hospital. The X-ray department was closed. This was now late into the evening. This poor 5-year-old child with a broken arm and their very distraught parents were then advised to go to Trelist the next morning, meaning that this child went without the care that they needed for a full additional 12 hours. This is just not good enough, and we have the facilities in Newquay. That individual should have been seen within a really short period of time at the local hospital, and they weren't. So the motion reads, Newquay Town Council and its residents understand the challenges around qualified staffing which have led to the reduction in opening hours in the days of Newquay Hospital. However, Newquay Hospital is a key part of the local healthcare infrastructure, and we call on Cornwall and Isles of Scilly, that's supposed to say, ICB board to take immediate action to reopen this site to its full operating hours. Localised healthcare is key to the ICB and wider NHSE strategy, and given that both local GPs and pharmacies are either under or looking to start collective action, it is vital that the ICB step in to save the provision of healthcare in Newquay. Newquay has the largest electorate of anywhere in Cornwall, and with the higher levels of demographic deprivation than in many other parts of Cornwall, that have seen investment and support. We ask that the ICB Chair, John Govett, and the CEO, Kate Shields, engage directly with the Town Council over this issue as a key stakeholder. I will propose that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Williamson. Councillor North, you have an interest as your...
Can I just say that I think you need to say Newquay minor injury units, because Newquay Hospital itself isn't closed. It's the minor injury unit that the hours change. The hospital is still running, so it's just so they know.
That's fine. Did you want to step out for this one, or are you happy to?
Yeah, I'll leave. I'm employed by CFT, and they're the ones that provide the service.
So for context, CFT run the hospital and Margaret works for CFT. Councillor Kenny to start with.
Happy to support the motion, but I do think we all have to take it on board that Newquay Town Council had an additional housing target of 4,400. It looks like we will be well over 6,000 by 2030, and I'd be really, really surprised if we don't get an increase in our housing target to at least 8,000 because of the new numbers. We have had no more health support, and we cannot, our health people cannot cope. We haven't got enough dentists, we haven't got enough pharmacists, we haven't got enough doctors, and we haven't got enough staff for the ICB. So it is a major, so if we could bring in the increased population that is into the motion, or at least include it when you raise it, because it's, forget about getting a national health dentist, and all of us are going to be suffering because we are simply not getting the additional staff. And I think it's possibly a government thing rather than Cornwall Council. I mean, they're as stuck as everybody else, really. But I think it's an issue we have to raise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ICB, which is NHS in Cornwall, have a devolved budget for healthcare. So, yeah, Councillor Gardner, you had your hand up.
Weirdly, I've seen this became a bit of an election issue for the general election, and they all started arguing over it, about not being enough funding. From what I understand, because I met with the chief exec of CFT, with the previous MP before the general election, when this was first announced, and it's a really I think perfect storm of conditions, and it's mostly around there's 3 ladies off on maternity leave. Of course, most of the nurses who man this unit are nurse practitioners and need additional qualifications on top of the normal nursing qualifications because it's a nurse-led service. There are no doctors in the actual minor injuries unit itself, and I believe it's the shortage of those nurses. The last I heard was that there was a training program in place to upskill some nurses from elsewhere, and that was going to be, and this was all going to be solved after Christmas. Perhaps what we could just add to this, and I fully support this, of course, why wouldn't I? We could just add to this just some clarity around the dates. If they are planning to do it already, and it's just what we don't want is a letter coming back saying, yeah, we're going to do that. Just ask for some clarity around the dates of when the actual service will be returned to normal, because I think that is the plan. No one has ever made a decision for this to be a reduced service. It's necessity that's led them down the road. It's certainly not lack of budget, and it's certainly not a choice, an operational choice that's been made by the ICB or by CFT.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
I'm not sure what part of the NHS my partner works for. Do I have to declare an interest?
No.
No. Can I just point then that we're not the most deprived area of Cornwall, because Bodmin is, so we're not quite.
So just to be really clear, I put higher levels of demographic deprivation, not the highest levels of demographic. Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Hello. I'd just like to thank you.
Sorry, Francis, can I just propose a 10-minute extension? Seconder, Councillor Slade, all in favour? That's fine. All in favour? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for putting this motion forward, and it's good to hear that there's been, I think, potentially unanimous agreement on this item, which is wonderful, and that these conversations have been going on historically, but I think it's good to keep the pressure on because, we don't want the minor injuries unit to become one that slowly but surely becomes less staffed over time. I know of another child, a primary school child, who had to go even further north than Bodmin to get a broken arm fixed. I also know of an 80-something-year-old woman who had to go to Truro because she fell and she couldn't get seen. And it was only a minor injury, but it also could have escalated. And it's just additional impact on A&E in Truro or another A&E. And so, yeah, I think the sooner we can get this, especially before next summer, if we can get some sort of reassurance that actually it's going to be a properly staffed unit, because it's just a lottery, a timing lottery of when you fall over.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we'll note the timescales and increased population that Councillor Kelly noted as well. So I propose, have a seconder, it was Councillor Williamson, wasn't it? All in favour? Thank you, unanimous. Brilliant, thank you. Could you get Margaret back in? Thank you. So that's that. So item 13 is the, we enter the, I can't get my words out, exempt business. So to resolve, I resolve that pursuant to section 1(2) of Public Bodies Mission to Meeting Act 1960, the public and the press leave the meeting at this point because of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. So I'm afraid, members of the public, that means you're going to have to leave as well.